According to the United Nations Programme on HIV/AIDS, Nigeria has the second largest HIV epidemic in the world, with 1.9 million people living with the virus. The program further states that low levels of access to antiretroviral treatment remains an issue for people living with HIV. Thus, the report of the COVID-19 outbreak indicates that people with compromised immune systems are more likely to become seriously ill with the virus. This led some to suggest that people living with HIV might be more susceptible. My guest is from the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA. Welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Ibrahim Adra. The Federal Capital Territory Administration is entering the second phase of the distribution of palliatives for residents of the nation's capital. In the first phase, at least 600,000 households benefited from the exercise across the 6 area councils. This week on FCT in Focus, we give you details of the second phase of the exercise.
It's the third phase of the palliative distribution exercise for the most vulnerable in the nation's capital. The Minister of State for the FCT, Dr. Ramatu Aliyu, is flanked by the chairman of the 6 area councils ahead of the movement of the trucks to their respective areas. Each of the area councils are getting 2 trucks of food items and condiments each. The FCT minister emphasized the need for transparency, promising that there will be no diversion in the distribution.
We are here to hand over to the 6 area council chairmen. This is symbolic. We do have 6 trucks at the stores, which I am sure, and I'm mandating the civil society organization to leave no stone unturned. But as you all know, we do not own the trucks. So they are holding us to ransom for those ones. That part of the arrangement is not for them to come into Abuja and then to proceed to Abaji and, far beyond. So the ones going this way are here. We have 6 area councils and 2 trucks are going to each area council with 3,000 bags of rice and 3,000 bags of condiment. We, Ab initio, wanted to at least say, okay, the entire 25,000 bags of condiment and 25,000 bags of rice be taken at the same time. But as we all know, each truck takes a maximum of 600 bags or 6,000 bags of the 10 kg bags. Definitely by arithmetic, we'll be needing over 300 trucks. 162 for the condiment and 162 for the rice. So in loading one after the other, we could just take 2 hours. Before you load 10, that is 20 hours. For our men to be able to load these 12 trucks, you should know that they were awake for 24 hours of the night. Can we please appreciate them? So it is much more than meet the eye. It is very easy. You look at it and say, why didn't they take it to this place? If wishes were horses, we would have loved. So we would have loved for these palliatives, the entire of it to even flood the city so that everybody will be happy.
Just like the first phase, each of the area councils will get 25,000 bags of condiments and 25,000 bags of rice. Again, the monitoring team, which is made up of representatives from civil society organizations and religious bodies, will be playing an active role in the exercise.
I want to publicly say it here that, and I hope the area council chairmen have heard, and with the fear of God, this time around, they are going to do that which has been agreed to be done. The presence of civil society here is not to tarnish anybody's image, but we represent the people. We are the voice of the people and the voiceless in the society. And so, please, I want to beg you people, these consignments, they are for everybody. They are not for politicians alone. They are not for religious people alone. They are not for indigenous alone. They are for every vulnerable persons living in the FCT. And I am sure with our observations and with what people went through the last time, it will not happen again this time around.
Meanwhile, the FCT administration did not relent in its efforts to enforce the protocol of the eased lockdown after the first phase was extended by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. The lockdown was eased mostly to ensure food security and on the premise that no country can survive a total lockdown without the requisite palliatives for the citizens. The eased lockdown came with protocols and guidelines, which several residents violated. For instance, these worshippers were arrested for disregarding the ban on gathering of any sort. There are also arrests for breaking the curfew and the ban on interstate travel. Earlier, the minister of the FCT, Malam Muhammad Musa, had a meeting with representatives of the FCT Christian and Muslim communities, led by the FCT Christian Association of Nigeria and the FCT League of Imams Initiative. The meeting was called at the request of the religious leaders, who wished for the reopening of places of worship in the nation's capital. But the minister has other plans.
The meeting appreciated all the good work and efforts being done, particularly by our health workers in the territory, by our security officers in the territory, as well as all other persons involved directly or indirectly. The meeting also acknowledged that since the beginning of the COVID-19 in Nigeria in general and in FCT in particular, all leaders and public officers are concerned with one fundamental fact, that is to save the lives of Nigerians. This had been the main driving force, and even after 9 weeks of the pandemic, it has not changed. And we also agreed that whatever decision is being taken has to be guided by medical experts. So the conclusion of the meeting is that based on the guidance of the medical experts and consultation with highest authority, the Presidential Task Force gave a decision and communication on the fact that all the measures approved 2 weeks ago be extended for another period of time to enable organizations, individuals, and all of us plan for a gradual opening up of the society, ensuring that all the needed health steps are undertaken. And that's what we have agreed. So leaders of the religious organizations have agreed to work towards eventual opening up at a time to be determined by the Presidential Task Force based on medical advice. But in the interim, a team has been constituted consisting of representatives of the religious organizations and their leadership, as well as the FCT administration. This team will gradually look at what the modalities of operating places of worship is going to be when COVID-19 lockdown of the FCT is released or removed.
Nevertheless, a team consisting of representatives of the religious organizations and the leadership of the FCT has been set up to look at the modalities and protocols of operating places of worship whenever the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 lifts such a ban. Some of the protocols that may be coming into effect when that happens includes the compulsory use of face masks, compulsory hand washing, and social distancing.
Thanks for staying tuned. COVID-19 is a serious disease, and health authorities want us to take the recommended precautions seriously to reduce exposure to the virus. So, Regular and thorough washing of hands with soap and running water is important, or use alcohol-based hand sanitizers. Also, maintain at least 2-meter distance when in public places or with anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Now, let's recap stories that made the headline within the week in the nation's capital.
President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to state governors to work closely with the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in the national response to the pandemic. The president gave the directive at a virtual meeting with some members of the Nigeria Governors Forum. The president also presided over the second virtual meeting of the Federal Executive Council. 6 memoranda were approved at the meeting. One of them seeks to build capacity of about 1,000 seafarers said to be idling away due to lack of competency certification.
The memo was for the training of seafarers on board foreign vessels for sea time, and it was for a total of $454,000.50.
In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the Executive Order 008 on Voluntary Offshore Assets Regularization Scheme. President Buhari signed the amendment following inputs from stakeholders on the needs to strengthen implementation mechanisms and structures. This was revealed in a statement from the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has also been holding virtual meetings. Professor Osinbajo presided over a meeting of the National Council on Privatization. The council approved the presentation of a draft legislative instrument to enact the health sector reform bill.
The COVID pandemic situation globally has revealed certain lapses and challenges as far as the healthcare delivery system in Nigeria is concerned. But council in its wisdom had actually started to consider a total review of the health sector about a year ago, pre the advent of the COVID crisis. So council took a decision that the stakeholding engagement should continue, especially since this reform promises a major universal coverage of healthcare delivery to the generality of Nigerians. What we are looking at essentially is a situation where the citizens of this country do not have to pay to receive quality health care.
Also, the Vice President presided over a virtual meeting of the National Economic Council. Governors joined the meeting via teleconference, while some ministers joined the Vice President in his office. The meeting discussed the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy.
Net oil and gas revenue inflows to the Federation account in the first quarter of 2020 amounted to 940.91 billion naira. This represents a shortfall of 425.52 billion naira, or 31% of the prorated amount that is supposed to have been realized by the end of that first quarter. The economic growth in Nigeria, that is the GDP, could, in the worst case scenario, contract by as much as minus 8.94% in 2020.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has extended the gradual ease of the lockdown by 2 weeks, citing the need for other segments of the economy to adequately prepare for compliance with the guidelines. The chairman of the task force, Mr. Boss Mustafa, made the announcement at the PTF Daily Briefing.
Advisedly, the current phase of eased restriction will be maintained for another 2 weeks, during which stricter enforcement and persuasion measures will be pursued.
Meanwhile, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 is kicking against large gatherings during Salah celebration, saying it might put many people, particularly the aged, at risk of COVID-19 infection. Some governors in the northern part of the country had relaxed the lockdown imposed on their states to halt the spread of the virus, to enable their citizens to celebrate the Eid al-Fitr.
Welcome back. My guest is the Director General of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, Dr. Gambo Aliyu, who talks about the management of HIV/AIDS in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Gambo Aliyu, thank you for joining us on Dateline Abuja.
Pleasure to be here.
I'd like us to begin by looking broadly now at COVID-19. I mean, you had an agency that has been battling HIV, another virus, for a very long while now. putting them together, let's broadly look at COVID-19. What has been your assessment of the virus and the responses, global responses so far?
Well, this answer is supposed to come from NCDC and Presidential Tax Team. My context here is where it affects people living with HIV/AIDS.
Yes, I'll be going to those specific, but as a health practitioner yourself, I was hoping you would be able to just give an assessment of the virus so far from, the knowledge you've been able to gather and the conversation with your colleagues.
Yes, sure. Globally, you can see it is everywhere. This is the assessment. It's everywhere, and in terms of mortality and morbidity, we are seeing it, but it varies from region to region, and we perhaps probably may see things that may come to explain why those differences are. But certainly, there are places that the virus have gone through its full phase, and there are places where it is just picking up. It will reach that stage where it grows rapidly, the exponential pace. And that is the phase that is the critical or fearful. If at that particular phase, individuals and communities work towards prevention, work towards limiting individuals' movement and interaction and person-to-person transmission, then definitely the kind of outcome that are seen in other parts, that we're not able to do that at the beginning, is likely to be different. So,
let's look at the risk factor now. Just like HIV, we hear from what we go, if it's anything to go by, that those who have issues, underlying issues, stand a bigger risk. So extrapolate that, you would imagine that those with HIV would be more prone to the COVID-19, right?
Surprisingly, the data we are looking at from countries where this disease has gone through its full phase, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing increased risks either of presenting with COVID or suffering consequences, consequences of COVID, like in terms of morbidity. We haven't seen that yet, but you see, these countries, as I keep saying, are countries that had a very good account of individuals living with HIV/AIDS in them, in terms of getting to identify individuals, getting to reach out to individuals to get them on medication and maintain them on treatment. Here, the scenario is a little bit different. We are beginning to realize that we have reached certain milestone in terms of identifying individuals in Nigeria that live with HIV/AIDS and get them on treatment. But still we have some kind of long way to go in terms of getting the needed chunk, which is, or the target chunk, 90% or 95% of people living with HIV/AIDS to know they have HIV/AIDS in Nigeria. We know we have that gap, and we know there are individuals out in the community, about, let's say, 500,000 or so Nigerians live with HIV/AIDS, but they don't know, and they live with HIV/AIDS, or they don't know about their status, or they know about their status, but they are not taking medication, or they're taking this medication but elsewhere, or they have started taking medication, probably they drop out of medication. And these are the group that we don't know how the trajectory of this virus is going to look, among them, because those ones that are on treatment, are people that we have contact with, and are people that we can always have an account on their health and what they are doing. But those ones that don't know their status, and if unfortunately the virus is hacking their immune system rapid and fast, and it has eaten up the body defense mechanism to a certain level where it is just about to give up, we don't know how they are going to fare with COVID. And this is one thing that we have been calling, before COVID, and now that COVID is here, it is important for people to know about their HIV status. it is important when they know about their HIV status to do something about it. COVID is something we are looking at, something that comes, and we're hoping that it will pass very soon. It will leave us, but HIV is something that has been with us for more than 2 decades now, and is unlikely going to go away.
In spite of this lack of direct connection between COVID-19 and how it impacts on people living with HIV, we shouldn't be complacent, would we? I mean, for example, those whose record you have and know they are going, what should they be doing different from the advisories that we get to curb the spread of COVID-19?
Those that know their HIV status, and even those that do not know their HIV status, the call is the same. People should maintain social distancing. People should wear face masks. People should stay at home until necessary. If it is not necessary, they shouldn't be in public gatherings. There shouldn't be crowd. They shouldn't join crowds, and they should stay away from crowds. And this is important, because that is the easiest way where the virus gets spread. By the time people mingle, they come close to each other, the tendency of having the virus spread across them is much higher. For those that know about their HIV status and they're taking treatment, we're urging them to make sure that they have enough medication in their stock. If they don't have, they should rush to their facility where they are collecting this medication. They will give them up to 3 months worth of drugs for them to take. And this is important. If there has been any time where people living with HIV should adhere to their medication and should make sure that they are on their medication, it is this time. Their immune system needs that boost, it needs the support, and they need to be healthy. So that is the call. There is no medicine for COVID-19 as of now. There has been one that has shown some kind of prospect and is now been allowed to go and is been tried. But in terms of vaccine and medication, no. And HIV medication have not been found to be effective on COVID, because I think there has been this rumor around, and people also have been using HIV medication, even those that don't have HIV, hoping that it helps with COVID-19.
I was actually going to ask that question.
Exactly.
I mean, since they're all boosting immunity.
Exactly. So, but there is no evidence that it does. And, it is always good to use medication, after finding out their area of effect, or how they help, to either prevent or how they help to attack certain illness. Otherwise, those medications, having them in your system may not be helpful all the time. But if you have a work for the medicine to do in your system, then that is the right time to take the medication.
Thank you for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a rest and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's play our part in reducing the spread of the coronavirus. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, and make sure that you and the people around you observe good respiratory hygiene by covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze, and dispose the used tissue immediately and properly. Stay home if you feel unwell. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Let's continue the conversations online through the email address and Twitter handle on your screen. Also, be sure to share anything happening within your locality with us. I'd like to also remind you that you can view the program on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. I'm Ibrahim Adra. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.